chapter 4, verses 26 to 32. The parable of the growing seed. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is like a farmer who scatters seed on the ground. Night and day while he's asleep or awake, the seed sprouts and grows, but he doesn't understand how it happens. The earth produces the crops on its own. First a leaf blade pushes through, and then heads of wheat are formed, and finally the grain ripens. And as soon as the grain is ready, the farmer comes and harvests it with a sickle, for the harvest time has come." The parable of the mustard seed. Jesus said, "How can I describe the kingdom of God? What story should I use to illustrate it? It's like a mustard seed planted in the ground. It is the smallest of all seeds, but it becomes the largest of all garden plants. It grows long branches, and birds can make nests in its shade." I have become resigned to the fact that I do not have a green thumb. Over the past 12 years, I have tried gardening in 3 different states, and I've never really achieved a great garden. My first garden was a non-starter. We tilled a section of our backyard and tried to grow plants from seeds, but they didn't make it. For our next garden, we went with a small raised bed and a very small self-watering planter's box. And that garden did okay, but every year we had big issues with bugs killing off our squash plants, which are like my favorites, and which were the only plants that ever seemed to do well. And everything else we planted either underproduced or just never produced at all. So I don't know why, but we went big on our next garden. We put in a large section of raised beds, we paid for nutrient-rich soil, and we even set up sprinklers to help water the plants. And it just never did great. I would go out morning after morning with my coffee to tend to my plants, but to no avail. And so year after year, because my gardening efforts felt like a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted money, we decided when we moved into our home this last year that it's time for me to stop planting gardens. And instead, I am going to spend my time and my money at the farmer's market with professionals who seem to know how to make these plants grow. And this is why I don't understand the farmer in the first story. They sow their seeds on the ground, they go to sleep, and then seemingly they're mystified at how their plants grow. The farmer in this story scattered seed, that's it. After I planted my seeds, I worried about them. Are they getting enough sun? Did I bury my seeds at the right depth? Are my seeds and plants getting enough water? Are they getting too much water? Does my soil not have enough nutrients? Do I need something to keep the birds and the squirrels from eating my seeds, digging up my plants? And what about those bugs? How do I keep these bugs from eating my precious veggies? And bees. Does my garden have enough bees? Sleep? Will the seeds of the kingdom of God grow? How can it even be possible? And I can't help but think that perhaps there might be something the farmer should be doing, like taking care of something, checking something, managing something. But no, the farmer in our story scatters seed and then goes about their life without any thought to their seed's growth or management. In this story, the farmer doesn't even seem to know how the seeds grow, which is really frustrating. And yet they do, even though they are not concerned. They just have faith that it's going to happen. And the seeds in this story, they do their thing, regardless of the lack of attention that the farmer shows them. And one day those seeds are full grown and ripe and ready for harvest. And that's when the farmer seems to jump into action. The kingdom of God is like. And when we use this phrase, the kingdom of God, we're talking about the realm where things operate as God had intended and as God intends things to operate. And not just for humanity, but for all creation. So in God's kingdom, everyone is loved, welcomed, cared for. In God's kingdom, everyone is fed and housed. In God's kingdom, each person knows their inherent worth and value. And in God's kingdom, the earth is seen as something to care for and not something to exploit or dominate. And our second story in our text tonight, which is also about the kingdom of God, Jesus asked this question: what can I compare the kingdom of God to? I know, Jesus says, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. One of the tiniest seeds, and yet when it's sown to the ground, it becomes a huge shrub. And its branches are large, and it helps provide a place for birds to build their nests. Now, I don't know about you, but there really isn't anything sexy or romantic about a mustard seed or a mustard shrub. And the people who gathered to hear Jesus teach this originally would have been even more confused than you and I are by the comparison. In fact, they would have been conflicted by Jesus's comparison of the kingdom of God to a mustard seed. You see, in the ancient Near East, a mustard seed was considered an invasive species, a weed. So like mint or honeysuckle or those crazy vines that seem to grow all over East Lawrence, it was unlikely that you would meet someone who had intentionally sown mustard seeds. Just didn't happen. It would be like me saying, what can we compare the kingdom of God to? The kingdom of God is like a dandelion seed. It's a teeny weeny seed, and yet when it's sown, it becomes a beautiful dandelion, which spreads across your lawn and across your neighbor's lawn and across your neighborhood. But people don't intentionally plant dandelions, do they? Because in our culture, a dandelion is considered a weed. And it was the same with mustard. The kingdom of God is like. Jesus was telling anyone who would listen that the kingdom of God is like an invasive weed. The kingdom of God is something that isn't widely accepted or wanted by our culture. It's something that people aren't always willing to sow because it can't be controlled. Jesus is telling the crowds that the kingdom of God will grow whether you want it to or not. It will spread from where it's sown into your neighbor's yard and into the yards of your entire community, your city, your world. Oftentimes with you not even knowing how. And when the kingdom of God is full grown among us, it will provide shelter to those who are in need of a safe place to land, a place of hiding for those who need to escape harm, and cool shade for those who are in need of rest. It's true, the kingdom of God may not be as strong or as mighty or as cool looking as a cedar tree or one of our redwoods. It may not draw the attention of presidents or people with power or wealth or position. And that's understandable because the kingdom of God is like a weed. It's inconvenient for some of the plans that we have for our life. Father Richard Rohr says, for God's kingdom to come means my kingdom has to go. And some of us are not willing to let those kingdoms go. We want it on earth as it is in heaven for us, as long as we don't have to let go of our kingdom, right? Loving others, advocating for justice so that God's kingdom becomes visible, it is hard work. It requires our time. It requires our resources, which is why it's not something that everyone is willing to do. It has a cost. And I don't know where each of us are at today. Perhaps some of us are in a space where we're just feeling the heavy responsibility of working towards a just and hope-filled world. And so perhaps tonight you might take away the part of this story that the kingdom of God grows even while we sleep. And you might see that as an invitation to rest. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And it does that because the kingdom of God is always expanding, it's always growing, it's always spreading, even without us not always understanding how. Now, some of us might be in a space where we need hope, where we need healing, a way forward. And so perhaps the message that there is a God who is always at work even while we sleep, working towards justice, bringing love, hope, and healing, well, that is a hope-filled reminder that God does care. And for others, the invitation to be a part of God's work of justice, of love, and healing might be that exciting opportunity that you are looking for to get involved in sowing those seeds of love and hope. The beautiful thing about Jesus' use of parables or these stories in the biblical text is that most of the time Jesus tells these stories and he never explains them. And we do it a little bit because of our cultural context and change. So what might God have to say to you through this story today about what the kingdom of God is like, about what that might mean for you? What is God saying to you today?
My name is Tia. My pronouns are she, her. Very quiet, so just make sure you can hear me. So today I'm sharing a story that's similar to how people thought of like mustard seed plant as like an invasive weed that wouldn't really go away. But now after that text, I feel like most people are seeing it in the light that we all do. So growing up in Lawrence, we see a variety of bugs, a lot of weird bugs. It seems like they come out in full force during spring, from the deafening swarms of cicadas to the clumsy June bugs and the disgusting mayflies. Every year, Lawrence would be invaded by ladybugs as well. They were everywhere, covering everything. While my family would like frantically try to shoo them away and get rid of them, I couldn't help but think they were kind of cute, because they're ladybugs. To me, ladybug season was always kind of like a beautiful part of spring. It was as if the town was kind of painted in ladybugs. They were literally everywhere, little splashes of color to brighten your day. Despite their despite their relentlessness, they would not go away. That's the word we're using. They had like way too many numbers. They were constantly everywhere. You try to leave your front door and it was painted red. So that's what I'm trying to explain there. I didn't see them as pests. I saw them as like a nice, pleasant reminder that even like the smallest creatures have a place in this world. Everybody has a place in this world. So while my family may have been trying to get rid of them and losing their battle with the ladybugs, I always enjoyed their loveliness, the loveliness of ladybugs, which is, fun fact, what a swarm of ladybugs is called.